You really think this place belongs to you?
You don't belong here. Take your small love story somewhere else, like behind the kitchen. That was the time. As soon as the wine left Clarissa Whitmore's crystal glass, it soaked the front of the man's dark suit. The deep red color soaked through his lapel, staining him in front of 100 rich people with no pity. She didn't say it in a low voice. Everyone at table 5 could hear her say it loud enough to make a couple of people gasp, but not loud enough for anyone to hear her. Nobody attempted. Because it was easy for them. A waitress who is black? A black man is talking to her. Two persons are out of place. And what about Clarissa? Clarissa thought she was putting out a fire. What she didn't know, and what none of them knew, was that she was pouring gas. Because the man she just embarrassed wasn't a waiter, not from the area. He wasn't a charity case seeking to get into high society by being charming. He owned the business that was set to ink a $600 million agreement with her husband's business. And that transaction would fall apart in the next 30 minutes. The futures of everyone would change. And it would all go back to that one glass of wine and the smile that followed. Welcome to Hidden Worth, where real power doesn't always wear a Rolex and justice moves softly, unless it doesn't. If you appreciate authentic black stories where dignity beats money and kindness and courage change the story, go ahead and hit that follow button. You help these voices get heard, and believe me, you'll want to see how this one finishes. This isn't just a narrative about a drink that got spilled. It's about a woman who wouldn't shut up, a man who didn't have to prove anything, and a room full of people who now understood how costly their bias was. Let's get started. People spotted Nia Brooks without her saying a word. She walked through the room like a soft song, calm, concentrated, and impossible to ignore once you got the beat. She wore a simple uniform, a clean white blouse, black slacks that were just the right amount of ironed, an apron knotted with purpose, and sneakers that had seen long shifts and longer nights. There wasn't a single strand of hair out of place in her immaculate high braid. People remembered her eyes, though. They were warm, clear, and inquiring. And what about her smile? The kind that made people think, even for a moment, that there was still good in the world. She was 26 years old, lived on the east side of Charleston as a child. She lost her mother when she was 16. Her dad left a long time ago. After then, it was only her and her younger brother, Malachi. He was now 12. She was smart, humorous, allergic to everything, and the reason she worked extra shifts without complaining. She used to have dreams, like going to college, getting a degree in hospitality management, and maybe even opening her own little soul food cafe one day. But when Malachi got sick and the debts piled up, those dreams were put aside like clothing that didn't fit anymore. Nia still came, though, every day. All of the tables, all the plates, with respect, with care, even if it wasn't given back. At Savannah Estate, the divide between guests and servers was quite clear and cold. Some people smiled politely. Some people didn't pay any attention to her. And some, like Clarissa Whitmore, treated her like a piece of furniture with a heartbeat. Clarissa said to another guest, loud enough for Nia to hear, "She has that look, like she'd be cute if she didn't have to work here." Nia didn't move. She never did. Not when they made fun of her voice. Not when they cut her off in the middle of a sentence. Not even when her boss, Gerald Huxley, urged her to stay invisible unless absolutely necessary. Nia had learned the hard way that grace wasn't just about saying the right thing. It was about not letting them get to you when they said the wrong thing. What about that night? That night, when everything went wrong and a stranger in a blue suit had wine dumped on him like he was nothing, Nia was the only one in the room who didn't look away. Because people had always looked through her. She had promised herself that she wouldn't do it tonight, not again. Cassian Reed could come into a room like wind through a broken window, quiet and unassuming, yet impossible to ignore once you sensed the change. He wore a navy blue suit that wasn't too spectacular but fit him perfectly. Not a tie, no handkerchief. He had a plain silver watch on and a look in his eyes that said he had seen too much to be impressed by crystal chandeliers or drinks that cost too much. Most of the people that came that night didn't even notice him. He wasn't really loud, he didn't brag, he didn't show off a name or a brand. People at Savannah Estate thought he didn't belong because of that. Cassian Reed, on the other hand, was not just anyone. He started Reed Capital, a quiet but powerful company in the finance sector, and was its CEO. His business was all about turnaround acquisitions, which meant taking failing businesses and turning them into billion-dollar giants. And tonight, he was going to sign a $600 million agreement with Whitmore Holdings, which would make the news before morning. He didn't bring any security. He didn't send helpers ahead. He came in alone 30 minutes early, exactly like he used to do before the masks went on. The gold leaf ceiling, or the tray of foie gras, didn't stop him in his tracks. The sight of a young black woman smiling as she cleaned a table made her braid swing gently with each step. Her face was delicate but robust. She had something familiar about her, something that is real. She reminded him of his sister Simone, smart, caring, and gone too soon. Cassian hadn't talked to anyone else in that room yet, but when he saw Nia Brooks, he turned around without even thinking. He wanted to know her name. She smiled back carefully, since she thought he was just another guest trying to be charming. But he wasn't trying to be funny. He was paying attention. When she talked about her dreams, including the cafe, her brother, and the late nights, something changed in him. For a short time, Cassian Reed wasn't the richest person in the room. He was just a guy who knew what it was like to be ignored. And while they talked, something unusual happened. In a world full of fake laughter and contrived pride, two strangers saw each other clearly. But that moment wouldn't last long, because someone was keeping an eye on them, and there was already a misunderstanding building. At Savannah Estate, the rules of politeness were wrapped in white linen and given with a smile, but there was a lot of judgment in the air. And for Nia Brooks, that judgment smelled good and had pearls on it. It all started with the little things. Guests acting like they didn't hear her when she asked if they needed anything. They didn't want to make eye contact because they thought it was beneath them. One woman once waved her off with the back of her hand as she was swatting a fly. Clarissa Whitmore, in particular, made it a game. She always talked to Nia like she was a slow child, drawing out her words and overpronouncing them, then laughing with her husband like she had told a joke. "She's got that whole natural thing going on," Clarissa said to a guest while looking right at Nia's braid. "It's very earthy." That night, she told Nia to say prosciutto again, so she could giggle at how she said it. But Nia didn't even blink. She never did. Not because it didn't hurt, but because demonstrating that it did would have given them too much power. Other employees had seen it. Some people felt sorry for her. Some people just turned away. The restaurant manager, Gerald Huxley, knew how Clarissa was. Everyone did. He always told Nia the same thing. Don't cause friction. He had a mortgage and a weak back, so he always said this: just smile and go on. She smiled, but not because she wanted to. She grinned because in settings like this, the only way to stay alive was to shrink just enough so that no one would notice, but not so much that you would lose your humanity. That night, Clarissa walked past Nia with her clutch held tightly to her side and said to another visitor, "Some of these new hires come with attitude, don't they?" Nia didn't say anything. Cassian Reed did hear it, though. He didn't do anything yet, but he remembered how Naya looked. He had seen the similar gaze in boardrooms, schools, and elevators. The appearance of someone who is used to being judged. That night, every sarcastic remark, every smirk, and every sideways glance added fuel to a fire that no one could see yet. But Naya could feel it. And soon, everyone in the room would. The yelling didn't start the misunderstanding. It all started with whispers, looks, assumptions that piled up like cards until the whole table fell down. Cassian had been standing next to Naya in the corner of the ballroom, away from the spotlight, and talking. No romance, no bad things. Two folks are having a calm time in a loud world. But in a place where being there meant power and being black meant being suspicious, it was enough. A man in a gray tuxedo said to his date, "Looks like the waitstaff brought their plus ones." His lady chuckled behind her glass. Adorable nonetheless, they fit together. After that, Miles Whitmore came. He came up with a fake smile, 2 glasses of champagne, and a look that was both charming and insulting. He said, "Hey there," to Cassian, and then looked at Naya. "Are you all done with your break? Our table is out of napkins, so if you have time, please come." Naya was about to say something when Cassian softly lifted his hand. "I'm not with the staff." Miles blinked. Then he smiled more, as if he hadn't heard it. "Don't worry, man. I just wanted to ask." Clarissa showed up before Nia could say anything. She walked around like she owned every place. She looked at Cassian and saw he didn't have a name tag or anything else that would make her recognize him, so she immediately ignored him. She took a glass of red wine from a passing tray, looked to Nia, and then back to Cassian. She added in a sweet and harsh voice, "You know, this isn't really the place for workers to romantically get together, but it's so cute. Really." Cassian didn't say anything. He just stared at her. Clarissa grinned, raised the glass, and tipped it forward. The red splashed all over Cassian's chest. The stain spread across his shirt. The room was quiet. Someone let out a gasp. Another person laughed, but they weren't sure what to do. Clarissa turned her head. "Maybe now you'll remember your place." The hush that followed wasn't just silent, it was guilty. Gerald, the manager, stood still by the bar, his face pallid. Everyone stayed still. Nobody said anything. Not Nia. With her palm tightly clasped at her side, she took a step forward. Cassian calmly straightened his sleeve and turned away without saying a word. He took his time walking toward the exit. And when the doors closed behind him, something that couldn't be seen changed. No one could understand it yet, but they knew deep down they had just done the worst thing they could have done. Nia stepped forward just as the doors were about to close behind Cassian. Her heart was racing, but she spoke clearly. She said, loud enough for the tables around to hear, "That man is not one of our staff." People looked. Forks stopped in midair. Some guests grimaced, while others turned away and immediately became interested in their wine cups. But Nia kept going. "He didn't come here to help you. He didn't deserve what just happened, and the rest of us don't either." Clarissa laughed quickly and sharply. "Calm down, honey. It was a joke, a mistake." Naya's eyes stayed fixed. "Isn't it funny how those kinds of misunderstandings always happen to people who look like me? Who looks like him?" Miles moved around in his chair. "Okay, that's enough now. We shouldn't make something bigger than it was." Gerald, the manager, took a step forward, but then he stopped and opened his lips as if to say something. He stepped back behind a line of white orchids and pretended to look at a floral arrangement. The silence came back, thick and harsh. Naya looked around. Her voice got low enough to sound personal. I've been working here for almost 3 years. I've smiled through things you wouldn't say to your dog. People have called me names. Someone has touched me without my permission. People have made fun of the way I talk, walk, and look. A woman at table 7 glanced aside because she remembered that she had once made fun of Naya's voice. I've kept quiet because I needed the job, because I needed the money, because I had to pay the bills at home. She stopped. Her voice shook for a moment, then it got steady. But seeing you pour wine on a man you didn't even know just because he was chatting to me, that went too far. Clarissa opened her mouth again, but Naya stopped her in a kind but forceful way. You could say it was a mistake, but we both know it wasn't. You thought he was less because he looked like me. The room was silent. Naya stepped back with her chin up and declared, "For once, I'm not going to be quiet about it." It wasn't a big deal. There was no clapping, no music playing in the background. Just the truth. Not filtered, not comfortable. And you can't ignore it. Once someone finally says what no one else will, the quiet will never be the same again. The air was cooler outside. The ocean breeze came in from the coast of Charleston. It was mild yet strong enough to cut through the heat of shame. Cassian Reed stood under the bright lights of the restaurant's stone entrance. His navy suit was soaked in crimson wine, and the fabric stuck to his chest and arms. But he didn't move, did not change his tie. He just took his phone out of his pocket. He looked at it for a while. His reflection was peaceful and unreadable on the screen. Then he hit a number. No looking, no doubt. It rang once. "Mr. Reed?" Quickly, a voice answered. "We're ready." Cassian spoke in a gentle voice. "Take back the offer. Be quiet." "Sir, you heard me. End the deal. I want all communication with Whitmore Holdings to be shut down within the hour. The board statements were written and approved, and I want the media brief to be out by AM. Got it. Anything else?" Cassian stopped. He looked over at the glass walls of the restaurant, where people were laughing again, as if nothing had occurred. He could still see Clarissa, sitting with her drink raised again and looking pleased with herself. He could see Naya standing silently by the wall, her shoulders still up and her pride still intact. "Yes," he said. "Get the terms for buying Savannah Estate ready. I want to make an offer by the end of the week." The person on the other end didn't ask any questions. Right away. Cassian hung up the phone. No problems, no long talks. Just do it. The gears had already started to move inside. At each table, phone screens buzzed quietly. Investors started to gaze at each other, not sure what to do. A low murmur developed, spreading through the audience like static. But Cassian didn't stay to see it happen. He fixed his sleeve again, turned his back on the restaurant, and started going down the stone path to the street. He carried the wine like armor, even if it smelled. He wasn't mad. He wasn't even shocked. People had judged him by the color of his skin or how simple he seemed before. But it could be the final time someone does it without getting in trouble. Because they didn't simply disrespect a man tonight. They made fun of the person who owned the table they were eating at. And as Cassian walked out into the darkness, the storm he had softly let loose was already starting to swell behind him. It began with a flicker on the screen. The background music in the ballroom dropped for a split second, although it was hardly noticed. But then the big screen in the middle, which had been showing the Whitmore Holdings logo in beautiful gold, glitched once and then went blank. There were whispers all across the room. A few visitors looked up, confused, but kept talking. After that, the screen came back on. There was only one message, written in bright white characters on a blue background. Reed Capital is no longer a partner with Whitmore, effective immediately. The room stopped moving. No one did anything for 3 whole seconds. Then, all of a sudden, voices swelled like waves. People took their phones out of their pockets, glasses clinked on tables, and fear set in. Clarissa glanced at Miles, and her face became pale. What in the world does that mean? Miles was already checking his email again. It's gotta be a mistake. Whitmore Holdings board members suddenly sprang up from their chairs across the ballroom and started talking quickly. One of them pushed their way through the mob to get to the AV team. Who gave the go-ahead for that message? The tech man just put his hands up. It was planned by the company. The event presenter, who had been slick and practiced in the front of the room, suddenly looked like they were drowning in silk. He tapped the microphone. "Good evening, everyone. We are having a small technical problem." But no one was paying attention anymore, because the notifications were coming in so quickly that no one could read them. Alerts for stocks, investment drops, withdrawals that are legal, resignations from the board. One investor spoke it out loud, but not too loudly. "Our whole line of liquidity just disappeared." In just a few minutes, the mood in the room changed. No more arrogance, glitter, or the feeling of being untouchably successful. There were now frantic whispers, desperate calls, and the unmistakable smell of panic. Clarissa backed up to the door with her phone to her ear. "Get me legal right now. Get them on the phone, damn it." Miles took hold of her arm. "What did you do?" "I spilled wine on a staff member, Miles. That's all. That's all I did." A guest adjacent said, "He wasn't staff." The statement hit me like a smack. People started to think about the site again and again, remembering the man in the navy suit, how calm his eyes were, and how he didn't even flinch. Finally, someone said the question out loud. Who was he? And from somewhere in the ballroom, a voice answered, barely audible but piercing through the noise. He was the deal. And just like that, Whitmore's empire, which was based on pride, looks, and stupidity, started to fall apart right in front of their champagne-slicked shoes. Just as the fear was at its worst, the doors to the ballroom flew open. People muttered like they were at a funeral. Phones rang, and servers stood still near the walls, not sure if they should keep working or run. Then he came back in. Cassian Reed. The same suit, still stained with crimson wine. Same peaceful position. But suddenly, everyone was looking at him. This time, no one thought he was staff. Clarissa blinked, and her cheeks turned pale. He's back? Miles didn't say anything. He still had his phone in his hand, and the screen was lit up with news. Reed Capital backs out of the agreement. Whitmore Holdings is in trouble. Cassian Reed strikes back after a racist event in Charleston. Cassian didn't hurry. He walked through the mess as if it weren't his, as if he wasn't the cause, but the result. A man in a silver suit who was on Whitmore's board ran up to him. "Mr. Reed, please, there must be a mistake." Cassian stared at him without saying a word. The speaker went on. "I promise you that this can be fixed." "We didn't." "You did," Cassian said, cutting in with a quiet but sharp voice. "You all did." Clarissa went forward, palms outstretched, and her voice suddenly turned beautiful, albeit it was shaking. "Hey, I didn't know who you were. I thought—" Cassian finished for her, "that I was staff, because I was talking to a black woman who didn't have any diamonds on." She had a hard time swallowing. Cassian looked around the room. "If you're wondering who I am, I'm Cassian Reed, Reed Capital's CEO, and the man you just lost a transaction worth $600 million with." The quiet broke. People stared at each other, and their faces went from confused to horrified. Someone in the rear said, "No wonder he walked like that." Cassian looked back at Clarissa. "I've spent my whole life being thought of as less than I am. I used to work in restaurants like these. I used to carry trays and be dubbed a lad. So I promised myself that if I ever became successful, I would never let rudeness go unpunished." He turned to Nia, who was still standing at the edge of the crowd. He said, "You stood up when everyone else was quiet. And that's why I came back, to tell you that I saw you." Nia blinked and tears started to form, but she never changed her stance. Cassian nodded to her once and then turned to leave again. And this time, no one stopped him. No one was brave enough. Because now they all understood who he was and how terribly they had messed up. 2 days went by. Savannah Estate was very quiet. The line of black sedans and luxury SUVs that used to be there was gone. The lights in the ballroom stayed off. The high-end guests' banter had stopped, and the remaining staff were silent and giving each other uneasy looks. Everyone was eager to see what would happen next. Nia Brooks, on the other hand, wasn't waiting. She was busy. Her shifts were shorter now, but she still came in and did her job, cleaning tables, checking on customers, and folding napkins with the same care as always. Gerald, the manager, stayed away because he didn't know how to talk to the girl who had the guts to tell the truth in a room full of money. It was a little after 10 in the morning. On a Wednesday, her phone rang. A number she didn't know. Area code for New York. She thought about it. "Hey?" A voice I knew came across the line. "Nia Brooks?" She blinked. "Yes, I'm talking." "This is Cassian Reed." Her knees almost gave out. He kept going, his voice calm yet firm. "I meant what I said, Nia. I saw you. I witnessed what you did. You didn't just stand up for me. You spoke up for yourself and for everyone else who has ever felt tiny in a setting where they should have felt big." Nia gulped. "Thank you, sir. That means a lot." "I have a new plan," he remarked, "focused on the community. Genuine labor, a genuine voice, and real change. I need someone who can stay calm under pressure, someone who doesn't give up when things get tough." Nia couldn't talk. Her throat got constricted. Cassian went on, "I want you to lead it. You'll get help, training, and complete benefits. If you need to move, we'll do it. But what about the work? If you desire it, it's yours." Nia held on to the edge of the counter. "Sir, I've never done anything like—" Cassian cut in and said, "You already did. You were in charge, when it was important. I don't need degrees. I need love. And you have more of it than anyone else I met that night." Tears fell from the corners of her eyes. "Yes," she responded, her voice shaking. "Yes, I would be honored." Cassian said, "Good. Then we'll start next week. And what about Nia?" "Sir, walk into every room like you did that night. Let them be curious. Let them learn." The call was over, but the effect didn't. Because Nia Brooks was not being tolerated for the first time in her life. She was being picked on. By Friday morning, Whitmore Holdings was no longer the name on everyone's lips. It was the name on every headline, and not in a good manner. The video of the wine spilling event had spread like wildfire. It was in national news as well as social media. The short movie, which was less than 30 seconds long, showed Clarissa's smug smile, the red wine striking Cassian's chest, and Nia's voice getting louder in the quiet. Everyone had to keep watching it. Everyone could see what it showed. People reposted it with the hashtags #JusticeForCassian, #StandWithNia, and #BlackWorthMatters. CNBC did a whole segment. There was an article in the New York Times called "When Bias Meets Billions." Talk show hosts had their say. Famous people shared it again. The story spread throughout the world in 72 hours. Investors didn't wait for the spin, they got out. In just one day, the stock of Whitmore Holdings fell by 42%. Partners called off contracts. Real estate companies put their assets on hold. Tech affiliates started taking their names off of projects they were working on together. Banks stayed away from the name like it was poisonous. What about Savannah Estate? Closed for an unknown amount of time. Not for remodeling, just to keep things from getting worse. The restaurant that used to accommodate senators and CEOs was now dark. And outside, protesters held placards that said, "Dignity doesn't wear a tux," and "We serve respect." Miles Whitmore stepped down from his job on the board. Clarissa got rid of all of her social media accounts. But it was too late. People had seen their true selves, not the ones in their bios, but the ones that come out when no one is looking. An internal memo that got out shows that the top people were scared. We didn't think this story would go this far. Look for someone, anyone, to speak for us. But no one could fix what had already broken. People did remember, especially the ones who had been talked over, neglected, or pushed aside, like Nia. It wasn't just for one night. It seems like every night someone told Nia to be quiet. People like Cassian were mistaken for lower people all the time. And now the cost was being paid. Not in money, in terms of reputation. And the worst part? Whitmore Holdings didn't go down because of a business choice. It dropped because of a thought. A strong and arrogant belief that having power meant you could do whatever you wanted without any consequences. They were wrong. And the world made sure they knew, loudly, publicly, and for all time, that true power doesn't pour wine. It has the pen. And what about the folks they tried to humiliate? They were now holding it. Nia Brooks was in a completely different room a month later. There were no silver plates or chandeliers. There were no expensive heels clicking or champagne glasses clinking. But it was vibrant, full of life and meaning. Her name was clearly written on the glass door of the new Community Development Office. Nia Brooks, Director of Community Partnerships. She was standing in front of it. Cassian had done what he said he would do, and she took on the part as if it were intended for her. The job wasn't easy, it wasn't pretty, but it was true. She was working to start small business grants for local business owners, setting up mentorship programs for young women of color, and giving courses for restaurant workers on how to treat people with respect and know their rights at work. She wasn't just doing her job anymore. She was making something. Her phone buzzed one afternoon while she was leaving a meeting. Cassian sent a text. "Just checking in. I'm proud of you. Keep walking tall." She smiled. People didn't look past her when she stepped into a room anymore. They got up. They paid attention. But she never forgot that night at Savannah Estate, even with the title and the effect it had. The pain of that quiet, the coldness of being involved, the searing pain of red wine on someone else's chest. That moment changed everything. Not only for her, not only for Cassian, but for everyone who has seen, learned, and thought about it. And maybe that's the point. It might not require a platform to change a society. It could start with a voice. A single, steady voice says, "Not this time." That voice had been Nia, and the world had said yes. What is the lesson? This is it. Power doesn't always make noise. Dignity doesn't always wear diamonds. And your character isn't shown by who you smile at in public. It's shown by who you stand up for when no one else would. In our environment, judgment can travel faster than facts. where people are judged by their looks, dialect, or income level before anyone asks them their name. But that night taught us all that titles don't convey the whole tale. Some folks enter into a room and look like they don't belong there. They own it until they show you. This has been a Black story about bravery, respect, and consequences. It was given to you by Hidden Worth, where we think that true power comes from how we treat people who don't have anything to give us. If tales like this are important to you because they show something real about your life or your worth, click the follow button. Not for us, for the next time someone needs to be reminded. Because there is still someone out there watching. And someone else is still coming in with their head up high.